but I thought I knew more than I knew at the time. I think I thought I knew more about the research process. So when I started off, it was a big learning curve, going from undergraduate straight into PhD. I remember I was quite inquisitive, but didn't have all of the sort of research skills that the PhD teaches you, particularly those critical thinking skills, which is important, which you develop through doing literature review. Lots has changed, but I'm still the same person after doing the PhD. I'd say I'm a lot more capable now in research. That's what it trains you for. But the biggest surprise and perhaps benefit of the PhD, I think, was that the skills that you learn aren't just applicable to the PhD. I think that was my thought at the start, was that you would use your skills just to address that particular problem or a research problem. But actually, one of the best things about doing the PhD was applying those new skills in sort of broader life. So sort of critical thinking skills, they're great for research, but also useful in thinking about reading the news or thinking about problems in the local area. So it's quite nice to have that opportunity to actually broaden your horizons, both academically and also in your own life. I wish I'd done more paper writing, probably. So tried earlier on to write academic papers, even if it was just drafts for conferences. I did presentations throughout my PhD, but I never really focused on trying to get anything published, which is fine if you don't have the opportunity to do that, as I didn't. You can still do the PhD. I finished the PhD without a paper to my name. I've got some now because I published subsequently. But actually, if you've got the time and the motivation to start putting stuff down to a paper, it's a really good way of working on your structure and working on writing concisely, because it's a completely different ballgame to the thesis. And it's quite a good way of perhaps structuring sections or your analysis. Very well, mine, because I was a research fellow following my PhD, and I'm now a senior lecturer. So you use all those skills that you learn in the PhD in that role. It's kind of perfectly set up for that. So if you're pursuing an academic career, it's what you need to do. Plenty of failures, yeah. So along the way, I've done many job applications, going from end of the PhD to where I am now, senior lecturer. I've probably done 10 interviews in the last 5 years or so at various points, because initially we were on a rolling contract. And I've probably succeeded in 1 in 3 interviews that I've had. So you have to set yourself up for the fact that you need to put yourself out there. You're not going to get every job you try for. And a lot of the experience of applying for a job is that it's exactly that. It's experience. It's getting yourself used to talking in that situation and explaining yourself and sort of selling your skills and abilities. So my first post-PhD job was in Centre for Transport and Society as a research associate. So I went from doing my research in transport sustainability to doing project research within the centre, which is quite an interesting transition, because in the PhD it's you. It's all down to you. You do everything, and you're responsible for crafting that piece of work, and your thesis is yours. You've done every bit of it. You have control over the whole lot. And then you move into working in a research team. And the only real experience you probably have had of that is working with your supervisory team, which is quite different. So suddenly you go from you doing everything to somebody saying, "Oh, I'll do that with you. I'll do the literature review. You do the analysis." But also you do have to relinquish some of the control that you're used to having and get used to working together to produce a final piece of work. So now I'm a lecturer. I've got a mixture of lecturing and research. So on a weekly basis, an average week, I will teach a lecture or two to undergraduate students or master's students. Then I'll go back to the office and I will work on a survey, or I'll work on analysing interview transcripts or focus groups, or I'll work on designing a literature review or finishing a report. So lots of the things that you're probably doing now as a PhD, I'm doing week in, week out, with more teaching and a lot more freedom probably to direct specific areas of interest, which you guys know. The teaching currently, I'm quite new to it, and I'm finding it really fun at the moment. It's quite a buzz to go around and do the teaching, and we've got a good group of students in our undergraduate classes and master's classes, so it's a real pleasure to go and do that. And I think because that's quite new for me, I've been this lecturer for 5 years. I'm now a lecturer as well. That's what I'm finding most exciting. It's admin, probably. If you can not have to do the things like within the PhD, there's obviously things which are more mundane and dreary, and you still have to do those as a researcher often. So you still have to do transcription, you still have to do many of those things that can be a bit of a trudge. And sometimes the challenge as well of knowing that in an academic career, it's not always chasing some big question like you might be in a PhD. Often in the day-to-day work of a centre, you might be doing a couple of smaller projects as well at the side, which might be more consultancy focused, something like that, addressing questions which aren't your main area of interest, and yet that's an important part of the work. So it's balancing out those sort of inspirational big projects with the day-to-day work of smaller but important. I think what most surprises me is sort of how much scope there is to do what, to pursue research. I've thought before, you do your research project, you get to the end of that, and you kind of assume that's going to be the end. But of course, you're only unlocking a small part of the problem you're looking at. And so I'm still researching the things now that I was researching at the end of the PhD, just further down the line. So it's that sort of sense of adventure, I suppose. There's more out there, and you're constantly looking for the next sort of question. I would say earlier than I did, because I got lucky in the sense that there was work available in my centre following it. So I hadn't have had that opportunity, I'd have been in trouble, because I didn't pursue other opportunities. I was enjoying doing the PhD. I would suggest that by the end of your second year, start thinking very strongly about what you want to be doing afterwards. Set yourself up and think about the contacts you might have made, because the one thing I have learned is the process of getting into employment takes time. Months at the minimum to have applications, interviews, and that's if you're successful. So set yourself up early, start thinking about it, end of the second year, start with it. It was fortune in the sense that I was very fortunate that our centre director is very helpful in sort of making opportunities for us. So he's very keen to involve the PhD students and to keep them on in the centre where at all possible. So I benefited from that. I certainly did my best to make myself useful to the centre, so helping other people in the centre, so working with the centre as a team. So you're not just being a student, you're actually a part of the research team. So going to the centre meetings, being interested in what people are doing, offering your insight into things really helps you to build up yourself as a part of the team. But it was very much the fortune of there being opportunities as well, which helped me. Probably the eureka moments, like those moments when I used to do this thing where you go down, there's a pond outside Cuba, and I'd go down if I was really stuck, and you will have days when you're really, really stuck. You just don't do it. And you can't think your way through something. And so I go out and walk around the pond, particularly in the summer, lovely. And you do circuits around it, and then occasionally you'd have that moment where as you're walking around, just feeling really stressed, you start to get something, and walking is obviously really good anyway. You start to, and then suddenly you realise the solution, perhaps, or the way to structure an argument, or you realise what someone might be saying in a piece of data. Yes, I just remember those times of walking back from the pond to the office, feeling really good, sitting back down, and sort of breaking through those problems.